I'm going to rip straight into things. David Seymour, as you are probably aware, is a very, very busy man at the moment. He is the Associate Finance Minister. His everyday job is as Deputy Prime Minister of New Zealand. He's the Minister of Regulation today. He's also the Acting Prime Minister, and I understand he's having a few issues organising a wedding at the moment on the side. Please welcome David Seymour.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Jack. I was just saying to Jack, the coalition negotiations were much easier than the wedding planning, but also really useful practice for it. So I appreciate you having me along, and I apologise about the timing. I have been asked to cover for Chris, who's gone to Honiara in the Solomon Islands, and I actually think I got the better side of that deal, to be honest, but it does mean that I've got to be back to answer the third question at 2 o'clock, so I'll be able to rush off. I have a speech prepared, and in order to ingratiate myself to you, the audience, I'm going to declare right now I'm not going to give it. But I can give you a summary of what it says that should maximise the time for some questions from Jack, which, you know, is one of my favourite parts of my job, actually. And what the speech says is it tries to take on a big problem in a way that's not going to have everybody retreat to their usual corners and ensure that there'll never be a consensus and nothing will get done. And the really big problem that it seeks to address is kind of like the twin of the one that I understand Nicola was talking about just half an hour ago. On the one hand, you have the superannuation obligation. On the other hand, you have healthcare. They're twins in a family where 20th century welfare systems that were set up for a world where 4 kids was a small family, and of course you started having them at 21. So there was just always just a massive incoming wad of taxpayers to keep the whole scheme going. We now face the opposite of that. And it's going to lead to some really tough choices. Compounding that, particularly in the case of healthcare, is the fact that medical technology just keeps developing. If you look at the graph of medicines that are available for fighting cancer, due to a combination of AI and genetics, it is an exponential chart. And I'm really proud to be the Minister responsible for MedSafe and Pharmac so that we can consent new medicines in New Zealand and hopefully find ways to justify funding more of them because it's a really exciting time to be alive as far as the medical field goes. But the costs are still there. And the basic view I have is that what was designed by Mickey Savage and Peter Fraser, great statesmen with a lot of vision, but they designed the current healthcare system in around 1935 to 1938, and it hasn't really changed since that time. You have a funder, which is the taxpayer predominantly. You have a commissioner, which is either at various times been DHBs, the Ministry of Health, the health boards, at one point the Crown Health Enterprises, the regional health authorities have been the funder at different times. You have the commissioner who organises what needs to be done. Then you have the manager who delivers it and actually runs the hospital and makes sure that the right doctors are rostered on at the right time and the bandages come in the back so that everything's sort of there for it to happen, hopefully, or the procedures to occur. And then at the bottom, there is the physical buildings. Now, at the moment, we are one of few countries in the world where that whole stack from physical infrastructure to operations, to commissioning, to funding, are all almost entirely done by the state. And we have this model of rationing where if you're a good politician, you put more money in. If you're a bad politician, you say you can't afford it. And the truth is that nobody is happy. And I think the case for change is made for us by the forecasts where we transition from 20th century demographics to 21st century demographics, 20th century technology to 21st century technology, and we suddenly find that the numbers don't stack up unless we get something else called productivity into the mix. That's got to be our objective. And so I just put out the point or the thought in this speech that we are actually an outlier. Too often in New Zealand, our thinking is insular. I fear that the experience of COVID amplified that insularity. We need to ask ourselves, how around the world have other people and other cultures solved this problem? And I put up two. One is the Singaporean model, which will be familiar to a lot of people here, I'm sure. And that is the model which is predominantly savings-based. The other is the European model, or known as the Bismarck model, after the German, or at that time Prussian, architect of their welfare state, which is based on a largely private marketplace for healthcare, with the state acting predominantly as the funder at the beginning and assisting people who may not have the funds to access the marketplace. And that's quite different from what we have, where the state does everything else and then people who do have the money pay to go outside it. The alternative is to have a private market and fund the people that don't have the money to participate in it. And the reason that you might want to do that is that you get that thing called productivity, because the people with the decision rights, whether it is to actually do the maintenance on the hospital building rather than defer it so that you can run a nominal surplus but really be unsustainable. If you doubt that, go up to Northland Base Hospital and you'll see a visible version of what I'm talking about. People have to start making rational decisions about resource allocation, about asset maintenance, and you start to get a little bit more efficiency and a little bit less frustration. So that's what the speech says, and I hope it will be taken in the spirit intended, that there is an iceberg right ahead. And if we are going to avoid running straight into it, we must start to ask, how have our friends around the world solved similar problems? And could we learn from their models, particularly the Singaporeans, particularly the Franco-German Swiss Bismarck model? And what might we arrive at if we started to form a consensus around a different role for government versus private at the different levels of that stack: assets, operations, commissioning, and funding. I hope that's helpful, and I understand Jack was going to ask me some questions before I bugger off. Also point out that my speech at 8 minutes is 20% under budget, and that's how we like to operate in this government. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Good, nice and provocative. We appreciate that. So what would be the implications for the New Zealand insurance sector if we were to go down this path?
Well, if you think about the commissioning level, there are New Zealand insurers that do that now. If you have a problem, they will go and commission services, sometimes from hospitals that insurance firm, or particularly one cooperative, own themselves. I would see that as being integrated into a much more, one-piece healthcare system where private commissioning amongst perhaps a number of commissioners becomes the norm, but the role of the government is to ensure that all people can afford to access it. Right now, we have a state system, and the individuals that can afford it do everything they can to exit the system, and I think that's the wrong way around.
How do you avoid a US-style system, which undoubtedly has good health outcomes for wealthier people or people with better insurance, but is also the most expensive per capita in the world by some margin?
Yeah. Well, you avoid the US system by understanding why they have problems, and there's a whole lot of reasons that I think are poorly understood. One reason is that, and this goes back to World War II, they had price controls on wages. So employers started offering free healthcare in order to get more workers. One of the outcomes of that is they designed tax policy around it. And so if you're an American, it is crazy not to have tax-deductible healthcare insurance paid for by your employer. Your employer's paying your insurer, who's commissioning the work from your doctor, who's treating you. So there's nobody that has any visibility of anything they can actually influence, and so everyone is bidding the prices up. That's a structure, but that's an anomaly that comes out of World War II tax policy. Another thing about the US is that they have mandatory minimums on what has to be covered. So in some states, reading glasses are mandatory to cover. In others, they're not. What's interesting, in the states where it's mandatory to cover reading glasses, people change their reading glasses 6 times more often. It's a little bit like if car insurance had to include car washes, everyone would be driving through all the time. So, people love to get into the US debate, but they don't understand it. It's not a private market. It is a crazily regulated partial market with so many interventions that drive up the cost. And I actually don't think it's that helpful to hold up the US as the moniker of your market. I could go on all afternoon about crazy market distortions that are blamed, that the free market is blamed for in US healthcare.
Regulation. So ACT has consistently argued New Zealand is over-regulated. This government's moved to simplify things like the CCCFA. In your view, what specific financial services regulations, whether it's COFI, the CCCFA, are most in need of reform?
Well, the CCCFA, absolutely. And, in fairness to the government, there has been considerable movement on that already, and there's more to come with current legislation. The other one is the AEML, which I think has just been such an enormous frustration to so many people. Again, the government is moving on that. Then there's the climate-related disclosures, and particularly the fact that if you're a director, you're personally liable for a mistake in your CRD. So, relatively small companies are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on the assurance because, people want to be a director, but they don't want to lose their house. So that is, again, I'm learning lots of new avoidance phrases. It's under active consideration by the government. But fair to say...
Hang on, that means the government's avoiding it?
No. It means I'm avoiding giving...
I see.
Because the thing is, for the first time in my life, I know things that I can't tell everyone. So I got to be real careful. But needless to say, those of us who are more on the sceptical side of the value of high-cost regulation with little value on the other side are battling away under that active consideration.
Question from the floor. Minister Seymour, thank you for your thoughts on the health system. What are they in relation to superannuation, the changes needed to make it sustainable, and how cross-party consensus might be achieved?
Well, first of all, not to reiterate, but what I said before about we have this 20th century system that is now coming under huge pressure in a 21st century environment. So that's number one. There has to be change. Number two, if you look at what you can change, there's either the entitlement or the quantum. Now, if you want to change the quantum, you will have pitchforks. People say that people are up in arms about this Auckland planning change. You just wait till you say to people, yeah, you worked, you paid your taxes, you had a contract and a deal with the rest of New Zealand, but we're going to take it away. That's going to be difficult. I think on the age, you can make a reasonable argument that, people are living much longer. How often do you hear people say, 90 is the new 40 or whatever?
Not often.
But look, I remember...
I get your point.
I remember door knocking as a 30-year-old. And I still do to some extent, but my view of a 65-year-old was someone that was, really knocking on death's door. And I had the electoral roll, so it was a bit creepy, but I actually knew the age of every person I was door knocking. So when I got a 65-year-old, I'd sort of button up and be all right, you know, and think, God, I hope that this person might not make it to the door, but I'll be ready if they do. And, you know, these people would bound out past me in their spandex. Oh, you know, no time to talk, lovey, we'll vote for you, but we've got to... Oh, the far out. These people shouldn't be getting super. I mean, I got a superannuitant in my workplace who's extremely active. And so I think you've got to change the age. I mean, it's got to happen.
So okay, there's the age side of things, but what about the KiwiSaver component? I know that ACT usually opposes any form of mandating, but could you see if the payoff for an older superannuation entitlement is that you either incentivise KiwiSaver more or introduce some mandating around the enrolment? Would you support that?
Yeah, well, we're not opposed to mandating. We're a socially liberal party. We got that idea. But look, sorry, it's a slow burn, but thank you. Thank you to those people that did. Look, in terms of what role does KiwiSaver play, as Nicola said earlier, you know, it plays an essential role. There is such a huge amount of money there. So I think having flexibility around when you can access your KiwiSaver could be a really useful mitigation against some of the concern that people will have about raising the age of super, which in my view is inevitable. It's just a question of whether it happens in an honest and planned way or is forced upon us by bond vigilantes at some future time. So KiwiSaver flexibility, I think, is important. I think when it comes to mandating, I mean, it probably won't be a popular view in this room, but, you know, I look at the literature. I look at people like Michael Littlewood. I read David Laws from the New Zealand Initiative. And, you know, it seems to me that around the world, you can mandate people to save in a particular vehicle, but you can't change savings rates. So at the moment, you know, you can do 10% KiwiSaver. Just go on your website, do 10% now. Anyone can. But there's a lot of people who will say, I judge it better to pay down my mortgage faster because I'm getting, you know, 5-6% risk-free if I do that, or I want to invest in my business, or I want to invest in my kids' education. There's a lot of other choices people might like to make.
So you wouldn't support that in principle?
I don't think you need more mandatory, you know, because it's not mandatory saving, it's mandatory saving in one vehicle, and that will have crowding out effects, which for people that study this stuff much more engaged than me in it, will tell you that the net effect is zero.
Very quickly, and then you've got to shoot to the airport. Regulatory Standards Bill due back from Select Committee. Are you expecting that to change?
I don't think there'll be enormous changes. This is one of these things I know that I can't say, but it'll come back from the Select Committee. It'll be widely publicised, and you will get, you know, a bill that I think will be a real change in the way that New Zealanders relate to the state. At the moment, if something's popular, it gets forced on you, and often it arbitrarily puts costs on some groups of New Zealanders, and we kind of end up just layering this stuff up like lasagna over the years to the point we're much poorer than we could otherwise be. Now, you know, having a clear statement that if you want to put a cost on someone to achieve a policy goal, you can do that. But we're going to be much more rigorous and transparent on who's forcing what cost on who. And that, I believe, will change our culture over time so that this becomes a place where you have a lot more ability to plan your future, to make decisions, to save, to invest, and actually just make tomorrow better than today, which is why we all, either we or our ancestors, made a crazy journey out to these very remote islands. We wanted a better tomorrow. And the Regulatory Standards Bill, by changing some of the political dynamics and increasing the political costs of imposing you know, costs on other people through transparency, I believe is going to do a lot to strengthen the overall kaupapa that is New Zealand.
We appreciate your time. Good luck making the flight. Good luck in question time this afternoon. Please join me in thanking Acting Prime Minister David Seymour.
Thanks, Jack.